Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new Disney film, A Wrinkle in Time. This film was directed by Ava DuVernay, who worked on the film Selma. It got nominated for some Academy Awards back when they came out. Um, One thing to know with Ava DuVernay as well is, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think I read this online somewhere, that she is one of the first African American female directors to get over $100 million for a budget for an American film. I'm not 100% certain on that, but I think I did read that somewhere. She is one of the first African American women to direct a film that has over $100 million in its budget. So that's pretty cool. It's kind of shocking that it took until 2018 for that to happen, but still really cool that she is one of the first people to do that. But anyway, A Wrinkle in Time is a film that's also based on a book called A Wrinkle in Time. And it's a story about a young girl who has a father who's a well known scientist. He believes that he has found a breakthrough of some kind that's connected through both time travel and connecting the universes together and stuff like that. And he believes it can all be done through frequency and through the ability of the mind if the mind is willing to reach its full 100% capacity of what it can do. At first, people were kind of laughing at him about this, but as he took his science and his work seriously and his job seriously, he found ways to really make this scientific breakthrough possible, and he goes missing. And so it's 4 years later. His daughter, who's played by actress Storm Reid, I think her name is, she's basically very miserable without her father. She has a younger brother who also misses his father very much. And so the family's just trying to get things through. The mother is still very much involved in science, but even she's very much missing her husband. People really don't know what happened to this guy. They don't know if he really did make this breakthrough possible and he never found a way to come back to where he was, or if something happened to him tragically that caused him to die or to vanish without people knowing about it. So throughout the course of this movie, this young girl played by Storm Reid is trying to figure out what exactly happened to her father. One day, these strange celestial beings appear at her house, appear in her backyard. There's more than one of these celestial beings. I think Oprah Winfrey, Mindy Kaling, and Reese Witherspoon all play these beings. And so they claim that they can help her find her father through this dimension that they have access to. And so throughout the course of this film, they have to trust these celestial beings and hopefully find her father in the course of all this and through some of the knowledge and the notes, I guess I could say, as far as how he was able to achieve his scientific breakthrough. So she tries to do this as best she can, while also trying to trust these celestial beings as far as can she trust them to find the father in this other dimension that they claim that they can find. So overall, guys, A Wrinkle in Time, it's kind of a mixed bag for me. This is going to be a review for me where I have a lot of things positive to say about it, but I have a lot of negative things to say about it. So right off the bat, I kind of didn't like this movie. I really didn't care for it. There's things about it that I think are very good. Ava DuVernay as a director, I think we'll see her more often, I would like to think. I think for me personally, I'm okay with her handling a visual film. I don't think that was the problem of this movie. I think the problem of this movie was the script. And I've heard from numerous sources and from people who even told Disney themselves, people who are, I think, who are in charge of the rights of the book even, they're like, look, this book is unadaptable. There's just so many things about it that will not translate to film very well. This whole alternate dimension thing, I really don't know how the book was structured because I personally have not read it, but it must be structured in some way that would make it, turning it into a film very, very hard. Just based off the story I witnessed in this movie, obviously, it looked like it'd be a hard story to adapt to a movie. It's possible. I think a very experienced, very imaginative director could have done this in a very good way. That's not saying Ava DuVernay did a completely train wreck job on this movie. I'm just saying that something happened in this movie that really didn't translate to the screen the way it should have. And maybe this was just a sign for Disney to not adapt this into a movie unless you really 100% know that it can translate to the screen 100% the best it can. And I don't think the version they found here was the 100% best they could. So I guess that's the best way I can start off this review. So let's go into those positives and negatives that I claim that I have for this movie. So for the positives of this movie, once again, I think Ava DuVernay did a good job with the visual effects. The visual effects look great. The CGI looks like something you'd see in 2018, something very top notch, very top of the line. Not the best visual effects I've ever seen, but they're very good for this movie. They work for this movie. They definitely give me the impression that these kids are going into this alternate dimension place and seeing creatures and plants and all this stuff that don't belong on Earth and everything like that. So visual effects wise, I had no problems with this movie. I thought the visual effects were good. Storm Reid, who plays the young girl in this film, and gets a lot of screen time, thankfully, does a very good job in this movie. I bought into her character. I understood her struggles as a character. I understood her needs to find her father. Very, very good. She did a terrific job as this character in this movie. I also like the family dynamic and elements of this film. You really get the impression that this family really kind of suffered after the father vanished. And you really got the impression that they're really working the best they can to keep each other happy, keep each other in positive spirits the best they can. Obviously, Storm Reid's character has the biggest struggle with this, even more so than the mother. So I thought the family dynamic, and when the family really needs to work together to make things work in this movie, I thought that was good too. I also thought the message about being yourself and not trying to be something that another outside source or another adult or another person in school is trying to make you become. I like this message of just be the person you've always wanted to be. I think that's a good message for kids. I think that's something that's really going to resonate with kids in this film. I think that's a good message to take away from this movie that works by the end of the runtime. I also thought the various and bright filming locations they used were also very good in this movie. Definitely, they did a good job making sure they found filming locations that were bright and colorful and just fun to look at. I think a lot of this was filmed on location in like New Zealand and things like that. And obviously some of them, I'm sure 100% sure with all the green screens and everything like that were done in a studio somewhere too. But they did a good job finding various and bright filming locations for this movie. And then going back to Ava DuVernay again, I think she has the potential to be a great director. I think the work she did obviously with Selma and made a lot of people happy with that. Made a good Martin Luther King movie and everything like that because we never had a Martin Luther King movie until she made one. I think she has the potential to be a great director. I really, really do. I really do think with the right story, with the right visual touch, with the right subject in mind, I think she can make a great movie. I really think another great film outside of Selma will eventually happen with her. Maybe just not quite on this budget. Maybe not quite on a level like this quite yet. I hope she makes something smaller than this next. It can be, maybe not like a Marvel property or anything that big, but just something that's a little smaller, but that's more about the story and can have nice visuals. I think just this story right here, Wrinkle in Time, just wasn't quite the right fit. Something about it just didn't feel right. But for my negatives of A Wrinkle in Time, I think my biggest complaint with this movie is the sloppy writing. The writing of this film is bad. I'm not going to lie. The writing of this film is really, really bad. The complaint about the book being unadaptable to a film really does show here. I think the writing is just really, really sloppy. There's just numerous place and character transitions that just make no sense. Certain characters are introduced in a way that are just thrown in there and they hope it can work. There's trailers for this movie, so I can say who's in the movie. So I'm not going to spoil any major plot points, but I'm going to tell you who's in this movie as far as celebrities go, right? So Mindy Kaling's in this film, right? Reese Witherspoon is in this film, right? There's literally no introduction to their character. They literally just show up in one scene, and they're in the movie. And Mindy Kaling shows up in one scene, and now she's in the movie. Oprah Winfrey shows up in one scene. Now she's in the movie. Michael Pena shows up in one scene. Now he's in the movie. No introduction, of course, no, no background at all. No, 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 no. Just they show up in the movie. They're in there. They're we go from point A to point B, and they're in there, and that's it. There's just no introduction, no nothing. You obviously get little characterizations from them. You can explain to somebody what their character does in the movie. There's just no like proper introduction for them. There's just no there's nothing. This writing in this film, like I said, is just really really bad. The villain of this film I thought was also very lame. In fact, there really isn't a villain per se. In fact, there's a lack thereof of a villain. There is like this energy source thing that can talk, that can make people do bad things, but that's it. That there's really no physical villain in this movie, so I didn't really care for that too. Um, I thought going back to the visuals, they're great visuals. I felt like there was a ton of visuals though in this film that just were there for the sake of it. Like they were trying to hide the fact that the script was so bad that by showing pretty visuals, that'll make up for the fact that there's no story, or that there's a lack of a story. So I just thought like there's a scene where Reese Witherspoon turns into like this giant lettuce creature thing, and they're riding her through this dimension thing, right? And there's no purpose for it. She just turns into this thing and turns back to normal eventually, and it's done. And they never go back to it. So I really don't get why certain things like that are introduced and then they never follow through with anything later. Like there's no, like they never use it to fight the villain. They never do it to further the plot in any way. It's just there. It's just there to be a neat little visual and then it's done. So there's just things like that that really don't add anything to this movie at all, really. I also thought that there wasn't enough of the celestial beings. So that's the Mindy Kaling, Reese Witherspoon, and Oprah Winfrey character. They're there. They're in the movie. They get screen time, obviously, but once they're in the movie, they're in it for a little bit, and then they're gone, and then they show up towards the end again, and they're just kind of there. And I just thought there wasn't enough of them. I felt like there really wasn't a concrete reason besides the few things that they taught them that these group of kids that the film focuses on. Besides teaching them those few little things, that's really all they did. That's all they did. And of course, they have their own little neat characteristics and everything like that, but there's just not enough of them in this movie. I also don't get why Oprah Winfrey was 100 feet tall in this movie. I don't get why, there's scenes where she's normal size too, but for the most part, for most of her, I would say about 80% of her footage in this film, she's about 100 feet tall. And I don't get why. The film never explains why she has to be this gigantically big person for no reason. So that's another thing in this film that just didn't make sense to me. Also, I want to say his name is Charles Wallace, the little brother of Storm Reid in this film. They always, whenever they talk to him or talked about him in conversation, they always say his first and last name together. And I don't get why. When people talk to me in person or talk about me in person or, whatever, they just say my first name and then they're done, right? Like they put the first name into the conversation and then that's how that person's worked in. They don't say my first and last name in the conversation. They just say my first name. It's just like, just call him by his first name. Charles is fine. We get who it is if you just say Charles. It's just like, don't say Charles Wallace, Charles Wallace, Charles Wallace. Just call him by his first name. And I don't know. There's just so many things about this film that just don't work. There's certain things about this film that just do not work. So, as you can see by my frustrations, A Wrinkle in Time, I can't recommend this movie. I can't send anybody out to see it. My rating for this film is going to be 6 out of 10. That might be a little generous for those who know my rating system, but for those who also know my rating system, I really don't give out ratings like that unless if I really didn't care for the film. So 6 out of 10. Can't recommend this one, you guys. Sorry. Wrinkle in Time, you can skip this one.